What's up, everybody? A Sparrow with a Gun here from Sleepless Nights with another episode on what I'm going to tentatively be calling the Space Reverse Engineers series. We're going to see how that one goes for a little bit, and you can let me know if you guys hate it or whatever. But we're going to try it, because, I don't know, dissection just doesn't seem to be working for me very well. So we'll see. But I'm going to probably title this one with Space Reverse Engineers and see what you guys think and see how it goes in terms of the... Oh, wrong button. Oh, this is awkward. So anyways... we did another poll at the end of the last Inspiration episode, which is really working out fairly well. Not getting like a huge ton, but it's very clear usually what everybody's looking for. So this one was a bit surprising, though, I have to be honest. I was really expecting a different outcome, and of all the ships we're going to be working today on the Opalescence, which really shouldn't surprise anyone, actually. Yeah, no, it's fairly obvious. I was kind of expecting that's what we were going to be getting in the polls, and I wasn't really wrong. I just thought it'd be funny to, oh no one saw this coming. It's just a really cool ship. There's a lot of really intricate little building techniques in here that's really, really neat. So we're going to be looking at this one today, so without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so I figured the best way to do this would be to just start from the bow, the front part of the ship, and just work our way back, and we can just kind of analyze the different things and kind of nitpick it and tear it apart and see how it all works. I do have a couple of extras pasted over out here. One's been split in half, one is just a copy because I wasn't sure what else I wanted to do with it. But quite frankly, I don't know that we'll need all of this time. I might make a habit of showing it cut in half. But the last episode, I spent a little more time looking at the halved ship, and I didn't really learn that much from it. I didn't really get a whole lot of interesting things from it, so I'm not sure I want to chew up as much time with that. So I might make a habit of, towards the end of the episode, just showing that one or something. I'm not really sure. But again, this is an ever-evolving series. It was something that wasn't originally my idea, so I'm kind of just trying to experiment and do different things, and then you guys can let me know which way you prefer the most. But be sure to let me know. I can't really change things or make it better if you guys don't let me know what all what you're liking and you're not liking. So if you have an opinion on it, let me know. So the first thing right off the bat, this ship uses a lot of blast door blocks because I'm assuming not only for style, but also because of the collision box changes. For example, this allows this cool little grooved flooring. And this is a really simple way to do this, but it's very effective if you wanted something like a dance floor. Which, by the way, oh, that's a gravity generator. I thought it might have been a projector, and I was like, did I miss a projection? But so, wrong button. There we go. So you can see here, these are basically just blast doors, but they're flipped. So we have, I cannot hit the right buttons today. I apologize. Alright, so blast doors. So for those of you that may not be aware, they have a different collision box, which you can see right here, that the collision box actually has a bit of a buffer on the two sides, but they don't have it on the others. So it's just one side. I mean, I'm not explaining this correctly. Hopefully you can see it and it'll make more sense. On the two sides, the collision box is a little bit more narrow, and on the rest of it, it's normal. But what's being done here is you'll have... Actually, this one right here is pretty much the same thing. So you'll have one like this, but then they'll do a flip, like so. Now, there's got to be something underneath that's holding this together, so we'll tear that apart in a second. But essentially, they're making use of the varied collision boxes of the horizontal and vertical positions to create this kind of textured checker pattern, which is pretty cool. It's pretty neat. Now, as for how they're doing that, I don't really know, because unless it's attaching to the... Oh, that's what's happening. So these are mounted here, and then the next ones are mounted to that, and the next ones are mounted to that. So that's one way of doing it. How these are being held together, I'm not sure, though. Unless it's... Oh, it's coming from here, maybe? Let's just tear this apart and see what we get. Okay, so there's actually nothing down here I was expecting maybe an under frame that's holding it all together. So, what that would mean is these horizontal ones are attaching to the outer frame, but then I'm not sure. I guess this is attaching to that, and then this one's attaching to that one, this one's attaching to that one. So it's kind of, these are going this way, but then the horizontal ones are connecting to the frame above them, I guess is the pattern here. Yeah, okay. Because it wasn't making sense to me if you couldn't attach them, how that was being done. So that's pretty cool. The other thing it's not so much a building technique as much it is creativity. There's no real pattern exactly to it, but it's this staggered light fixture. This is really cool. Again, there's no real particular like technique that you need to know. It's just the idea behind it of they're basically stair-stepping these pillars in an offset kind of thing to where it makes them just kind of look like they're randomly hanging, which is pretty neat. I like it. There's a lot of those little things that they're not necessarily a building technique, but it's using some very creative stuff. We have another example of the blast door blocks using its collision boxes to create this kind of grating. Now, this is a little interesting. I'm a big proponent of the spotlights for cinematic purposes, not when you can see them like this because they're very bright, but when you're using them this way, because it creates a mist or a fog, which can be really effective if you're wanting to create like an ambiance. So this is pretty cool. It also is very nicely connected to this curved circular shape, so it definitely feels like you're going down a tunnel kind of thing. I really like that. It's simple but cool. Now as we get into more of the guts of the ship, you might say, again, I think these blast door blocks are supposed to kind of simulate a wooden deck kind of decor, which you could do this way, as they've done here, with just the color and texture separation that creates it look like creates an illusion of planks. But this is pretty cool too, to use the blast doors to actually make it look like planks. That's kind of neat. This is pretty interesting too. There's a lot of small grid to large grid connection here. And it actually looks like there might be a grid separation, even though this is still large. That's interesting. Oh, maybe not a grid separation. It's because of the blast door blocks here. That's what it is. It looked under here like there was a gap there, but it's pretty much just, again, because the collision boxes, I think. Hold on. No, that doesn't look right. Let's start dissecting here. Oh, I see. Okay, it's because they're using blast door blocks for the floor. And again, their collision boxes aren't the same height, so it makes it kind of look like they did a small grid, large grid separation, but they really didn't. They did do it here, however, and then used, again, the blast doors to create this plank look, which is cool. And I especially like the transition from large to small, and they still kept that. That's pretty neat. Now there's like I said, in this ship, there's a lot of little things that you can dissect, or reverse engineer, depending on, what you're doing. There's this is a cool little trick. It's using control panels. I thought it was LCD lights for a second, or LED lights, but it's not. Kind of gives it some more texture type of thing, or you could, depending on if it's for like role-playing purposes, you could say that they're dispensers or other things like that. I'm not really sure exactly what they're supposed to be, other than just decoration. And obviously this blue is from a projector, which is probably, or it's either, no, it's not above. It's probably down here somewhere, I imagine. Whoop, that's space. Okay, now that's interesting. If they only have a 1-block gap there. Oh, and this is another example. I mentioned it in probably the last 2 episodes, I think. But the use of half blocks is really, really well done here, because it adds that extra layer of texture and depth to the grooved style of the exterior hull. I really don't know where this projector is, unless it's on this. It may be on this, actually. Quite possibly. So we'll get to that. We'll get to finding the projector in a second. But we have this cool blast door roof that almost makes it look like lattice work or something, or some kind of awning. It's kind of cool. This is pretty creative, though. It's just using slope and... or not slope, what are they? Oh, they are slopes. They're rounded. Round armor slopes. And straight blocks to create this kind of cool, either S or decorative, or maybe even imitating a swan kind of pattern, depending on what the inspiration was. It also hides the lighting, which we'll turn our lights off, because the lighting is really cool here, but I want to make sure you guys can see everything. So there's this nice iridescent glow, and that's coming from these lights that are hidden behind this little archway thing, which is basically just 2x1 armor ramps. And you got one slope there, and then the rest are straight armor blocks, except for the rounded ones on the edge. So that's pretty cool. And then, like, you know, again, you have these little rounded ones that are just put together to make it look like a table and stuff like that. I want to find the projector, though. I'm actually thinking it's on this grid somewhere. There it is. I think. I don't know why the lights went out unless I broke something. Okay, so it's the first block on the small grid rotor. Again, for those of you that may not be aware, let me just go ahead and punch all this out. That way we can get in and out of here. Meh! Well, we could if my astronaut wasn't so fat. There we go. So again, you're using a small or a large grid rotor, and then they put a small rotor head on it. They put a projector. They connected this. Well, they would have connected it. I just disconnected it, but whatever. You would put the one block where that black one is, and that would have been holding this on top. And then I imagine because of the groove or the collision box change for the blast doors, they were probably able to reduce this rotor head as far down as it would go, and it still wasn't bumping into the floor, which is really, really creative. Really good idea. Even though I kind of just messed it all up. Again, we've got this kind of staggered light fixture idea, which is, again, really simple. It's just, you know, kind of random, up to you how you want to stagger them, but they're just incomplete interior pillars with a interior light on the end of them. We do have this cool glass. Again, it's not really anything that's too difficult or fancy. It's just done in a really well planned out way. So you just have a 1 block high angle of slopes and corners to create the shape, and then just a variant of large and small panels and corner panels to create the kind of dome glass window, which is really cool. Really, really cool. The only thing I will say about this, for those of you that aren't too experienced with glass, I believe at least these panels that have the interior plates on them have to be, yeah, like this, where they're basically set with the collision box facing up so that you can attach something on top of it. Otherwise, if you tried to attach something to it, you would be like this far down. It would have to be down on this block. So just be sure if you're trying to do something like that, you keep it where the collision boxes are facing away from whatever you want to hook up to it. Just a little tidbit for anybody that hasn't really worked with blocks like that very often. This is another small grid trick thing, right about there, looks like. And they used paneling, or not paneling, they used regular blocks, but used the texture coloring, like I mentioned before, to create the wood look. The couch is fairly clever, though. Again, it's just 4 rounded slopes. It looks actually like 1/2 or 2x1 armor base ramps without the nose, so that it has a bit sharper of an angle, or more shallow of an angle, I should say. And then the rounded slopes on the back. It's not, and then rounded on the bottom. So it actually works really well. I've never quite seen one done that way. and I think it's pretty cool. The table here is pretty interesting to me as well. Again, utilizing the blast door block plank type idea. And this is kind of cool. They used cameras, but then didn't complete them. And it makes it look like plates. I thought that was fairly clever. And then, of course, we have a 1x1 wheel, which we've seen used before for decoration. And the blast door corners, they don't actually go all the way down. I thought they would do a ridge. Kind of just have the corners go all the way down, but they didn't end up doing that. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then the way that these are done is kind of just, as you can see, they did this cool trick. Let me see if I can get under here. Alright, so basically you have the rotor head there and the straight blocks coming off of that. But then they have a central bar, and then they branch off wherever they wanted chairs to come out to, and then just used rounded slopes underneath them, which is pretty slick. I think that's pretty cool. And you can see this kind of thing done in all of these. They're basically just variants of the same idea, but they all kind of operate on the same basic principle. Once again, we see up here in the roof a way to create texture and depth by just varying the blast door block positioning and making use of the offset collision boxes so that you can add some different textures, depths, layers, things like that. But they're basically just scattered and staggered in different ways, different patterns. You can see that they are kind of keeping a symmetry. It's just, you know, rotating and varying the pattern a little bit. Gives it some nice variation. So that's pretty cool. And then back here, now this part I did find interesting about the ship, that you can see the mechanical side, the thrusters, the reactors, the cargo containers, but that's really the end to the interior. You can't really go much further than that, other than to go up here to the observation area. Which, once again, utilizes a lot of the same concepts. And I will say that's something I've noticed in a lot of ships that do really well and people really like them. It's taking some kind of building technique, or two or three of them, and kind of just implementing them in different ways all over the place. It doesn't really do a ton of different things. It kind of focuses on two or three key tactics or key techniques, and then just kind of varies them and does them all over the place and tries to match themes and apply them in different ways to make different shapes and stuff like that. But they always kind of keep some type of core building technique to most of them, and they do really well. But again, we have another glass dome. This one's a little bit different, but it's the same basic principle. You're using your angles until you get to the edge, and then, you know, going around and flattening off where you want the dome to be squared, and then just using angles when you want it to curve. So it's fairly straightforward. Again, you know, you could get into the, well, we have 3 panels here, and then you have, you know, 3 panels this way, and then you do alternating corners, and then you know, but it's more of just getting the shape that you're looking for. Obviously, if you use the 2x1s, the angle will be sharper, or not sharper, it'll be less defined. It's less of a steep angle. Steep was what I was looking for. If you use the 1x1 blocks, it's going to be a bit more of a steep, more angled angle. So yeah, that pretty much does it, I think, for the interior. Again, it's not really that robust of an interior. There's just a lot of really cool areas that make use of some of these techniques. This goes to the airlock. Well, actually, now that I think about it, if that goes to the airlock, where does this go? Oh, this goes out to the maintenance area outside. So yeah. Yeah, and as far as the lighting goes, that's probably, it's a really cool aspect to this particular one. Oh, I forgot the fireplace. Let's go look at this. But the lighting is one of those, again, it's just something you do by taste. It's not a particular special technique or anything. And I'm also wondering if I missed something up here, because I just noticed that this frame is set up a little differently over here. I guess not. You can't really get up here, and there's no real balcony or anything, so I guess it was just designed a little bit differently. I know it was to house the lighting and things, and you can see the rest of the archway here, which utilizes the 2x1 base, ramp, half blocks, and rounded corners, or rounded slopes for corners. Pretty cool idea. I like that. Alright, so over here, both of these are pretty cool. So this is the same kind of principle for the couch. I actually like this one a little bit better, where we have the nose, it looks like. Yeah, we actually have the slope tips here, and then straight blocks, and then you have the straight blocks, and then rounded all the way out here. They didn't just do a circular, they actually did a full armrest. But the basic premise of the couch is still the same. But what I think is cool is they actually match this to go around in a corner by using the corners, which is pretty neat. And then there's a table in between them, which then staggers down to a smaller table, which is very modern and kind of cool looking. Now the fireplace, I've always thought these are cool. They're basically just damaged blocks. So in this case, an interior turret that's placed upside down. Let's see, we'll go ahead and punch this out, I think. And then, what, cargo crate? Yeah, so a small cargo crate that's incomplete. And then the turret gives flame, and then there's basically just windows around the edge to seal it all in. And then they used a blast door block chimney. But it really is effective. From a distance, it does kind of look like a fireplace, which is pretty cool. Now, I will say, if you used a full block, again, I think they use blast door here because that's kind of the running theme, is making use of blast doors. But if you used a full block here, I imagine that this smoke would not be as obvious. Because that's the only thing that would bother me a little bit, personally, is the smoke leaking out through the sides. But you still can see it even with full blocks. So the blast door blocks does give it more texture. And what I mean by that is that if you have this way, there's a little bit of that offset that we've seen before. So it gives this kind of, this is the wider base, and then it tapers up to a thinner chimney. So if you were looking for more of that look, that is more effective. So before we wrap this up, let's go ahead and take a couple of notes from the exterior before we finish this up. Oh yeah, and I totally missed the master bedroom, VIP room, whatever this is supposed to be. I really do like this. This is something I hadn't seen quite often, but this is the reverse of this kind of style for lighting. But it's basically just an interior pillar that's not finished and then putting a light on top of it. I think that's really cool, because it kind of makes the light go up, so it's not as harsh in your face, but it gives more kind of a nuanced lighting. Then we have this one down here. I guess that doesn't really go up anywhere. And then we have the master bedroom here. I like this style too, putting two of those between the blocks. Now I will say, my OCD is killing me a little bit that the light isn't over here, but, you know, what are you going to do? Again, though, this is a pretty cool way to use the interior, or the large to small grid. To make use of the bed, there's a blast door block frame with the interior, or not interior, 1x2 ramp tips and corners to make the pillows. And then there's this really cool thing. It's very simple. It's just either 2 blocks or 1 block high of blast door blocks, but it creates a very modern, cool looking texture. And again, we have another big window, which, quite frankly, this is one of my favorite rooms if I was on this ship, because you have this big old bed and you could actually get a great view of the stars. Alright, so now I think we're ready to go outside. Dagnabbit, I was wrong again. Actually, I found something that I even missed in the inspiration episode because it's so well hidden back here. It's this, like, guest room type thing back here. Also, with the red lighting, it kind of looks like it could be a Sith room, but whatever. This is pretty cool. Again, making use of the collision box offset to give this a little bit more of a shallow, and then the middle stick out a little bit more. I'm assuming this is supposed to be a bedroom? Or a guest bed or something. It could be some other type of room, but I'm guessing. There's also this, which is 2x1 tips that are too wide, and then they're kind of staggered back and forth, and it creates this really almost soundproof foam type of wall texture, which is really interesting, and I totally missed it the first time around. So that's pretty cool. It also makes me want to investigate and see if I've missed anything on this side. I don't think I did. But I definitely missed that for the inspiration episode, because I just now found that while I was starting to leave. So now we're going to go outside. Alright, so from the exterior, again, not to sound like a broken record, but it's because this ship utilizes a lot of the same techniques, but does them repetitively in variant ways, or variations of ways. But the exterior is mostly, like a good 80% comprised of a combination of using these corner or slope ramps. That I call them ramps because, again, that's where the mod started from, but it's the 2x1 slopes and single blocks to give texture in combination with glass. That's like the majority building technique for the outside hull, is you got some kind of either slope or corner block that runs along this, and then every other row is some kind of either lower placed block in... I'm trying to see if I can find one. I know there's an example of them somewhere. Here, no, that's different color. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. So they either do like this, or they have a slope, or in some cases on the bottom there's half blocks, which give it the texture that it needs. But it's basically every other height change. So it's either a slope, or a piece of glass, or a half block. In some cases, in certain areas like this, it's just not different height, just a different color. But it still kind of has this every other row column change set up. And you can kind of see that most everywhere on the ship. There's a couple places where I'm assuming they had to do something a little different just to make it work. But for the most part, it seems like they kind of tried to stick to that idea, and then did some of this kind of stuff, where they just have a curve that doesn't really serve a purpose. It's just for decorative design, which gives it a little bit more pop and detail. Stuff like this. These two little angle sections here is another example of that. So, again, it's a fairly simple technique. It's not really something that you can really break down and go this, and this, and do it this way. It's really up to you as far as what kind of shapes and designs you're doing. But it's used all over this hull, and you can see stuff like this. Again, it's in every other. You've got a slope here, empty, slope here, empty, stuff like that. It makes a lot of use of slopes and angle blocks to create this kind of angular shape. Now, I will say one thing that's pretty cool about it is the variance in height. So, for example, it's not all just flat. Using that technique, they even did these side arms that raise it up a level, and then you get some height to it as well, which is really, really cool. And like I said, of course, this has to be a little bit different because they're trying to house all the thrusters and all that stuff, so it can't all follow that exact kind of building technique. But even down in here, you can see the every other spacing idea, and then using these slopes to create the kind of curved angles. So again, it's kind of one of those where once you did a couple of them that way, then it would just be kind of mixing it up and adding some variant to the shape. But a lot of it would be doing that technique repetitively. And it works really well because it's broken up. You've got the baselines that go this way, but then you've got a couple little raised sections with some decorative stuff. You've got lights that change the colors. You've got stuff that curves around glass. You have things that raise it up and do some more stuff with height. So it's varied enough that you don't really look at it and go, that's boring. And you actually look at it and go, wow, that's really cool. But the overall technique is fairly the same, just with a little bit of variance here and there for added detail and stuff. I think that's all I have to note on the ship for this episode. I again, it's one of those, once you kind of see the technique, then you can kind of see it used all over the place. It's not really like, well, we have to talk about the bow, now we have to talk about the engines, now we have to, it's like, it's kind of all using the same idea, just doing it with a little bit of variance each time to give it its own little identity. Now, one last thing I want to do before we wrap this up is just take a quick glance at what it looks like cut in half. Just in case you guys wanted a better, more open look at the ship kind of thing. You know, you can, for example, you can see here where the rotor would have been. When I cut it in half, it took the rotor with it, but you can see the rotor head. And you can see some different angles, like with the glass here, you can see how they set up just angle, angle, and then straighten it off type of thing. So just little stuff like that. Again, I'm kind of doing each episode a little bit different and waiting to see what you guys like the most about each episode and which editing, video stuff, things that I do, and let me know which ones you prefer in all the different episodes and stuff, and then I'll try and incorporate more of those things and cut out the things everybody didn't really care for. So last episode, I don't think we really learned a whole lot from cutting the ship in half. It just did give you a better look at the ship and how it was laid out, and maybe might help some people with planning rooms and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought I would just at least show them off when they're cut in half every time, but may not spend so much time on it as last episode. So with that, we're going to wrap things up here for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I will see you all next time. Peace.